Three stubborn triplets kidnapped a billionaire CEO who they suspected was their father, who abandoned them, drugging him at a restaurant in broad daylight and dragging him home to meet their mother. But when she opened the door and saw him tied up on her doorstep, her reaction revealed a shocking secret she'd been hiding for 8 years. What happened next will leave you speechless, because these 7-year-olds had no idea their simple plan would uncover the truth about why their family was really torn apart. It was another Father's Day week at Emerald College, and David, Daniel, and Emma returned home with deep frowns on their faces. They didn't know who their real father was, and they were out to get the truth no matter what and get the man to take responsibility and follow them to Father's Day in school. The three 7-year-old triplets marched through the front door like tiny soldiers returning from a failed mission. Their mother, Dr. Vanessa Williams, was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard the unusual silence that followed their arrival. "Mama!" Emma's voice cut through the quiet like a knife. "We need to talk." "Emergency family meeting." Vanessa wiped her hands on her apron and walked into the living room, where she found her 3 children sitting in a row on the couch like a panel of judges about to deliver a verdict. "What's wrong, my babies?" she asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. "Don't my babies us, Mama," David said, adjusting his glasses with the seriousness of a tiny professor. "We are 7 years old. We are big children now, and we have very serious questions." Daniel nodded gravely. "Questions that require honest answers, not the, 'you'll understand when you're older' nonsense you always give us." Emma stood up and placed her hands on her hips like a tiny CEO about to fire someone. "Mama, we want to know who our Papa Island. We want to know now." Vanessa's heart sank. She had been dreading this conversation for years, hoping she could put it off until they were older. But her children were growing smarter and more persistent by the day. "Sweethearts, we've talked about this before," Vanessa said carefully. "Your father. It's very complicated." "Complicated?" Emma's voice rose an octave. "Mama, everything is complicated to you adults. But we're not ordinary children. We can handle complicated. Uncle Mark has been coming to our school for Father's Day for 7 years, Daniel said, his voice filled with frustration. 7 years, Mama, and everyone knows he's our uncle, not our father. David pushed his glasses up his nose. And today, that coconut head Ruby called us the B word again. She said we don't have a real daddy. Emma's eyes flashed with anger. She said we're bastards, Mama, and her stupid brother laughed at us. Vanessa gasped and rushed toward them. She called you what? I'm calling your teacher right now. Mama, focus, Emma snapped, her tiny voice carrying surprising authority. The B word is not the main issue here. The main issue is that we want to know our daddy. We have the right to know our daddy, Daniel added firmly. We researched it. The Constitution says children have rights. David nodded solemnly. And one of those rights is to know who our parents are. Both of them. Vanessa looked at her 3 determined children and felt completely overwhelmed. These were the same babies she had given birth to 7 years ago, but sometimes she wondered if aliens had replaced them with tiny adults. Guys, please, she said, sinking onto the couch. This is not something we can discuss right now. You're still too young to understand. Too young? David's voice cracked with indignation. Mama, I can solve math problems that make my teacher cry. Daniel can read books that college students struggle with. Emma can negotiate with the principal until he gives us whatever we want. How are we too young? It's not about how smart you are, Vanessa said weakly. It's about adult things. Complicated adult relationships. Emma climbed onto the coffee table to look her mother directly in the eye. Mama, let me tell you something. We are not going to school tomorrow, or the next day, or any day until you tell us who our daddy island. What do you mean? Vanessa asked, alarmed. We are officially on strike, Daniel announced. No school, no homework, no vegetables, no baths. This is a peaceful protest, David added seriously. But we are very determined. We want our daddy, and we want him now. And we want him to come to Father's Day at school on Friday, Emma concluded. That's in 4 days, Mama. 4 days to find our daddy and bring him to school. Vanessa stared at her 3 children, feeling her resolve crumbling. Guys, Even if I told you about your father, he can't just appear at school in 4 days. These things take time. Emma stood up on the coffee table, pointing at her mother like a tiny lawyer making her closing argument. Mama, we are 7 years old, but we are not stupid. If you told us who our daddy is right now, we could find him, talk to him, and convince him to come to school with us. We are very persuasive. Extremely persuasive, Daniel agreed. Remember when we convinced the ice cream man to give us free ice cream for a whole month? And remember when we convinced Grandma to let us stay up until midnight? David added. Vanessa shook her head. This is different. Much more complicated. Stop saying complicated. All 3 children shouted at once. Emma's face turned red with frustration. We don't want to hear that word anymore. We are tired of complicated. We want simple. We want our daddy. And with that, all 3 children burst into tears. But these weren't ordinary tears. These were the kind of tears that could melt the hardest heart and make grown men question their life choices. Vanessa felt her heart breaking as she pulled all 3 children into her arms. Please, Mama, Emma sobbed against her shoulder. We just want to know our daddy. We promise we won't cause any trouble. We just want him to love us, Daniel whispered. And we want to love him too, David added quietly. Vanessa held her children tight, her mind racing. How could she explain that their father didn't even know they existed? How could she tell them that she had been too proud and too hurt to ever contact him? I know you want to know about your father, she said finally, but it's very difficult for me to talk about. Why? Emma asked, pulling back to look at her mother. Because it hurts, Vanessa admitted. Talking about your father makes me very sad. The children exchanged glances. They didn't like seeing their mother sad, but they also weren't willing to give up. Mama, David said gently, maybe talking about it will make you feel better. Sometimes when we talk about things that make us sad, they don't seem so scary anymore. Daniel nodded. And we're very good listeners. We won't interrupt or ask too many questions. Much, Emma added honestly. Vanessa looked at their hopeful faces and felt her last bit of resistance crumble. But instead of answering, she said firmly, Go to your rooms now. I just told you no. We'll discuss this when you're older. The children's faces fell. After all their pleading and negotiating, their mother was still refusing to tell them the truth. But Mama, Emma started. No buts, Vanessa said firmly. Go to your rooms. Now. The 3 children looked at each other with disappointment and frustration, but they knew that tone. When their mother used that voice, there was no negotiating. Fine, Emma said huffily. But this isn't over. Fine. Not by a long shot, Daniel added. We're not giving up, David concluded. The children trudged upstairs to their rooms, and Vanessa was left alone in the living room. They refused to eat dinner that night, but she maintained her authority as their mother, insisting it wasn't yet time to tell them about their father. But later that evening, alone in her bedroom, Vanessa lay in bed feeling sad and worried. Her children were growing up so fast, and their questions were becoming more demanding. She couldn't keep putting this off forever. Her mind drifted back 8 years, to that wild night at the graduation party that had led to 3 holy hurricanes with tiny legs and sharp tongues that could make a grown man cry. 8 years. Earlier in New York, Vanessa had been in her final year of medical school at Columbia University, working harder than she had ever worked in her life. She was determined to become the best surgeon she could be, to make her family back in Nigeria proud. Alexander Reed had been in her business administration program, already making waves as the brilliant heir to his father's business empire. He was smart, charming, devastatingly handsome, and completely focused on his future. When he had walked into her life at a campus mixer 3 months before graduation, Vanessa had felt like the world shifted on its axis. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, he had said, appearing beside her at the refreshment table. That's a terrible pickup line, Vanessa had laughed. It's not a pickup line if it's true, he had replied with a grin that made her knees weak. They had fallen in love quickly and completely. Alexander was everything Vanessa had ever dreamed of. Intelligent, ambitious, funny, and utterly devoted to her. After graduation, he had said one evening as they walked through Central Park, I want you to meet my parents. I want them to know that I've found the woman I'm going to marry. Vanessa's heart had soared. She was already imagining their future together, their wedding, their children, their life. The graduation party had been magical. They had danced under the stars, laughed with friends, and celebrated the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Alexander and Vanessa had had too much to drink that night, and they ended up having too much fun. That was the night Vanessa gave Alexander her heart, her soul, and her virginity. "I love you, Vanessa Williams," he had whispered as they lay in each other's arms afterward. "I love you more than life itself." "I love you too, Alexander Reed," she had whispered back. Forever and always. But forever had lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days later, they were supposed to hang out together. Vanessa had gone to Alexander's apartment to surprise him, planning to cook dinner for him to celebrate their graduation and their future together. Instead, she had walked in to find Alexander sucking his female best friend's face. The woman Vanessa had always been suspicious of, the woman Alexander had assured her was just a friend, was locked in what looked like a passionate kiss with the man Vanessa thought she was going to marry. Vanessa's heart had shattered into a million pieces. She had dropped her bag and run, ignoring Alexander's shouts behind her. "Vanessa, wait! It's not what it looks like." But Vanessa had kept running, tears streaming down her face. She had gone straight to her best friend Betty's apartment and collapsed into sobs. "You have to listen to him," Betty had said, handing her tissues. "Maybe there's an explanation." "What explanation?" Vanessa had sobbed. "I saw them, Betty. He was sucking his bestie's face. I clearly saw what I saw. I saw them licking their faces like dogs. Maybe it wasn't how it seemed," Betty had tried. "Maybe she came on to him. Maybe—" "Betty, what are you talking about?" Vanessa had interrupted, her voice rising through her tears. "Is it that his mouth was glued to hers? He wasn't tied there, but he was enjoying it. I know what I saw. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe you should hear him out," Betty had pleaded. But Vanessa had been too heartbroken to listen. She didn't want to hear any explanations. Alexander had tried everything to reach her. He had called hundreds of times, come to her apartment, gone to Betty's place, even waited outside her favorite cafe. But Vanessa had been too hurt, too angry, too heartbroken to listen. A week later, she had packed her bags and moved back to Nigeria. She had cut all ties with Alexander, blocked his number, changed her email, and tried to forget he ever existed. But a few weeks after returning home, Vanessa had discovered she was pregnant. And not just pregnant. Pregnant with triplets. The too much fun she'd had at that graduation party had produced 3 babies. 3 babies who would grow up to be hurricanes with tiny legs and sharp tongues that could make a grown man cry. Vanessa wiped away the tears that had fallen as she remembered that painful time. She had been young and heartbroken and too proud to reach out to Alexander. She had convinced herself that he didn't want her, that he would think she was trying to trap him with a pregnancy. Alexander was the heir to his father's empire, and he had returned to Nigeria 2 years after graduation to take over the family business. She didn't want to be seen as the desperate pick-me woman who tried to pin a man down with pregnancy. So she had made the decision to raise her children alone, never imagining that one day they would demand answers with the determination of tiny prosecutors. Across the hall in Emma's room, the 3 children were having their own meeting. "Okay," Emma said, pacing around her small room, like a general planning a military campaign. "Since Mama has refused to tell us the truth, we need to get to the root of this matter ourselves." "But how?" Daniel asked from his spot on Emma's bed. "We don't know anything about our father, except that he exists somewhere." David was sitting on the floor with a notebook, taking minutes of their meeting. "We need more information. We need to find someone who knows the truth." "But who?" Emma asked, stopping her pacing. "Mama won't tell us. Uncle Mark says he doesn't know. Grandma and Grandpa always change the subject." "What about Auntie Betty?" Daniel suggested suddenly. Emma's eyes lit up. "Auntie Betty, she's been Mama's best friend since they were in secondary school. She was even Mama's roommate in university," David added, making a note in his notebook. "If anyone knows who our father is, it's Auntie Betty," Emma concluded. "But will she tell us?" Daniel asked doubtfully. Emma grinned, and her brothers recognized that expression. It was the same look she got when she convinced the principal to give them a day off school for mental health. "Leave that to me," she said confidently. "Auntie Betty can't resist our charm." The next day was Tuesday. After school, the children immediately put their plan into action. They gathered in the living room with Vanessa's tablet. "Remember," Emma instructed her brothers, "we need to look pitiful. Sad eyes, droopy shoulders, maybe a few tears if necessary." "I can cry on command," Daniel offered. "Save it for if she starts to say no," Emma advised. David opened the tablet and found Auntie Betty's contact. "Ready? Ready?" Emma and Daniel said together. The video call connected, and Betty's cheerful face appeared on the screen. "My darlings!" Betty exclaimed with delight. "What a wonderful surprise! How are my favorite godchildren?" "Hello, Auntie Betty," Emma said in her sweetest voice, putting on puppy dog eyes. "We missed you so much. We need to talk to you about something very important," Daniel added, his voice already tinged with sadness. "Something terrible is happening," David said dramatically. Betty's face immediately filled with concern. "What's wrong? Where's your mother?" "Mama is at the hospital," Emma said, her lower lip beginning to tremble. "She doesn't know we're calling you." "We're in a life-or-death situation, Auntie Betty," Daniel said, his eyes beginning to water. "A life-or-death situation?" Betty repeated, alarmed. "What's happened?" "Our lives are being ruined at school," Emma said, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "The other children laugh at us and call us names because we don't have a father. They call us the B word," Daniel added, his voice breaking. "Yesterday, that evil Ruby said we don't have a real daddy, and her brothers said we're freaks of nature." David continued the performance. "This is terrible," Betty said, her heart breaking for the children. "But surely Uncle Mark..." "Uncle Mark is wonderful," Emma interrupted, "but he's not our father, and everyone knows it. We're becoming the laughingstock of our school. Soon no one will want to be our friends," Daniel said sadly. "We'll be social outcasts. We'll have to drop out of school and live on the streets," David concluded dramatically. Betty looked at the three heartbroken children on her screen and felt her resolve weakening. "Darlings, I'm sure it's not that bad." "It is, Auntie Betty," Emma said, her voice filled with desperation. "We just want to know who our daddy island. We won't cause any trouble. We just want to meet him once. Just once." "Please, Auntie Betty," Daniel begged. "You're our favorite godmother. You're our only hope. Our last hope," David added, wiping his eyes. Betty sighed deeply. She had always thought Vanessa was wrong to keep the children from their father, but she had promised to keep the secret. "Your mother will kill me if she finds out I told you," Betty said slowly. "We won't tell her," the children promised simultaneously. "We'll take the secret to our graves," Emma added solemnly. "And you promise you won't cause any trouble?" "You'll just..." "What will you do with this information?" "We'll be responsible," Emma assured her. "We'll handle it like the mature, sophisticated individuals we are." Betty looked at the three 7-year-olds on her screen and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. But their faces were so hopeful, so desperate. "His name is Alexander Reed," she said finally. The children tried to look surprised, but they weren't very good actors. "Alexander Reed," David repeated carefully, writing it down in his notebook. "What does he look like?" He's a very handsome man," Betty said. "Tall, with green eyes and dark hair. He has a nice smile." "Does he look like us?" Emma asked innocently. Betty's heart clenched. "Yes, sweetie. He looks very much like all of you." After they hung up, the children immediately went into research mode. "Okay," Emma said, grabbing the tablet. "Let's see what we can find about Alexander Reed." David typed the name into the search engine, and hundreds of results appeared. "Look at this," Daniel exclaimed, pointing to the first result. "Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Industries, one of Nigeria's youngest billionaires." The children's eyes grew wide. "Our daddy is a billionaire?" Emma whispered. "Look at his picture," David said, clicking on an image. There on the screen was a man who looked remarkably like all three of them. He had David's intelligent green eyes, Daniel's warm smile, and Emma's determined jawline. "That's definitely our daddy," Emma said with certainty. "Look at him, he's so handsome. And rich," Daniel added practically. "Very, very rich." "Look at this house," David exclaimed, scrolling through images of Alexander's mansion. It's like a palace. We could have been living there this whole time, Emma said wistfully. Instead of our tiny house. Why was Mama hiding him from us? Daniel wondered. He looks nice and successful. And rich. Maybe she thought he wouldn't want us, David suggested. That's ridiculous, Emma declared. Look at us, we're amazing. Who wouldn't want us? We need to find him, Daniel said suddenly. We need to talk to him. But how are we going to do that? David asked. We can't just walk up to a billionaire and say, "Hi, we're your children." Emma was already scrolling through more search results. Look, here's an article about his company. It says his office is downtown. And look at this. He eats lunch at Giuseppe's Italian restaurant every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Today is Tuesday, Daniel pointed out. And it's almost noon, David added, looking at the clock. The children looked at each other, and Emma grinned. I think it's time to call Uncle Mark, she said. An hour later, Uncle Mark arrived at their house for what he thought was their usual Tuesday outing. Uncle Mark! Emma ran to hug him. We found our daddy! Mark's eyes widened. You found your father? Your mother finally told you? Sort of, David said evasively. We got the information from a very reliable source. And we want to meet him, Daniel added. Today? Today? Mark repeated. Don't you think you should talk to your mother first? Uncle Mark, Emma said, looking up at him with her most persuasive expression. This is an emergency. We've been waiting our whole lives for this moment. Our psychological well-being is at stake. David added seriously. Our very survival depends on meeting our daddy today. Daniel concluded dramatically. Mark looked at the three children and felt his resolve weakening. He had always thought his sister was wrong to keep the children from their father. Where is he? Mark asked reluctantly. At his office downtown, Emma said quickly. But he's probably at lunch right now at Giuseppe's Italian restaurant. Giuseppe's? Mark's eyes widened. That's a very fancy restaurant. Are you sure about this? We're absolutely certain, the children said in unison. Uncle Mark, Emma said, taking his hand. We've never asked you for anything really important before. But this is important. This is the most important thing in our whole lives. Mark sighed, looking at their hopeful faces. This is a terrible idea. Your mother is going to kill all of us. Only if she finds out, Emma pointed out. And she won't find out if everything goes well, David added. Please, Uncle Mark, Daniel begged. We've been waiting 7 years for this. That's like 70 years in kid time. Okay, Mark said finally. But we need a plan. We have a plan, Emma assured him. What kind of plan? Mark asked nervously. The children exchanged glances. We're still working out the details, Daniel admitted. But it's a very good plan, David added. A foolproof plan, Emma concluded. Mark immediately regretted his decision, but it was too late to back out now. The drive to Giuseppe's restaurant was filled with nervous chatter from the children and increasingly worried looks from Uncle Mark. They had been stalking Alexander online for days, even going to his company and parking at a distance to watch when he arrived and left for work. They had followed him to his favorite lunch spots and knew his routine perfectly. What if he doesn't like us? Daniel worried during the drive. Impossible, Emma declared. We're adorable and brilliant. What if he's mean? David asked. He won't be mean, Emma said confidently. Mean people don't become billionaires. Only smart, nice people become billionaires. I don't think that's necessarily true, David said doubtfully. It is true, Emma insisted. I read it in a book. What book? Daniel asked. A very important book about billionaires and their personalities, Emma said vaguely. When they arrived at the restaurant, Mark parked across the street and they all peered through the windows. I see him, Emma whispered excitedly, pointing through the window. There, at the table by the window. Indeed, there was Alexander Reed, sitting alone at a corner table, looking exactly like his photos but somehow more real, more human. He's even more handsome in person, Daniel observed. And he looks sad, David noted. He looks lonely. That's because he doesn't know he has 3 amazing children, Emma said matter-of-factly. Once he meets us, he'll never be lonely again. The children had been whispering among themselves during the drive, and now Emma turned to address the group. The plan is simple, she announced. Uncle Mark, you're going to pretend to faint in the alley behind the restaurant. We'll run inside and tell him that our father collapsed and needs help. That's lying, Mark protested. It's not lying, Daniel said. It's Creative problem solving. Plus you will faint, David added. You'll just be pretending, but you'll still be on the ground. When he comes out to help you, Emma continued, I'll blow sleeping powder in his face. Sleeping powder? Mark's voice rose an octave. Where did you get sleeping powder? We asked Mama about it, Emma said innocently. She told us all about it for our science project. We may have gotten some from the pharmacy, Daniel added quietly. You what? Mark exclaimed. Don't worry, David said quickly. We researched it thoroughly. It's completely safe. For horses, Emma added helpfully. Horses? Mark shouted. Relax, Uncle Mark, Emma said calmly. We calculated the dosage for humans. We're very good at math. Before Mark could protest further, the children were already getting out of the car. Don't worry, Uncle Mark, Emma called back. This is going to work perfectly. What if it doesn't work? Mark called after them. Then we'll improvise, Daniel replied. We're very good at that too. The three children marched across the street with the confidence of tiny generals leading their troops into battle. Inside Giuseppe's restaurant, Alexander Reed was trying to enjoy a quiet lunch after a particularly stressful board meeting. The restaurant was peaceful, and he was looking forward to some time alone with his thoughts to clear his head after the difficult meeting with investors. That peace was shattered when three children suddenly appeared at his table, all talking at once. Sir, please help us, Emma said breathlessly. Our father just collapsed, Daniel added urgently. He fainted outside, David finished. Alexander looked up from his pasta, startled. Your father collapsed? Where? Outside, in the alley behind the restaurant, Emma said, tears starting to form in her eyes. He was taking us back from school when he just fell down. Please, sir, Daniel begged. We don't know what to do. Can you help us? Alexander immediately stood up, his food forgotten. Of course. Show me where he island. The three children led him quickly through the restaurant and out the back door into the alley, where they found Uncle Mark in his army uniform lying motionless on the ground. Oh my God, Alexander said, rushing toward the figure. Sir, are you okay? He knelt down beside Uncle Mark, who was doing an impressive job of pretending to be unconscious. Sir, can you hear me? Alexander asked, gently shaking Mark's shoulder. Should I call an ambulance? Is he going to be okay? Emma asked, her voice trembling with perfectly acted fear. Are you a doctor? Daniel added hopefully. Alexander was completely focused on helping what he thought was an injured man. I'm not a doctor, but I have first aid training. Sir, what's your name? Can you tell me what happened? As he leaned closer to check Mark's pulse, Emma stepped up behind him and quickly blew a handful of white powder directly into his face. Alexander immediately began coughing and sputtering. What the? But before he could finish the sentence, his eyes rolled back and he collapsed onto the ground next to Uncle Mark. It worked, Emma exclaimed triumphantly. He's sleeping like a baby, Daniel observed with satisfaction. A very big, rich baby, David added. Uncle Mark immediately sat up and looked around nervously. Is he okay? Please tell me we didn't kill a billionaire. He's fine, Emma said, checking Alexander's pulse like she'd seen doctors do on TV. Just sleeping. The powder we used is designed to make large animals unconscious for exactly 30 minutes. Since he's much smaller than a horse, he'll probably wake up in about 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Mark asked in panic. What are we supposed to do with an unconscious billionaire for 20 minutes? Take him home to meet Mama, obviously, Emma said, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. We can't kidnap a person, Mark protested. We're not kidnapping him, Daniel corrected. We're relocating him for a family meeting. It's completely different, David added. Kidnapping is when you take someone for money. We're taking him for love. That's still kidnapping, Mark hissed. Uncle Mark, Emma said patiently, we've come this far. We can't give up now. Help us get him to the car. This is the worst idea in the history of bad ideas, Mark muttered, but he was already helping the children lift Alexander's unconscious form. It's not a bad idea, Daniel said as they struggled with Alexander's weight. It's a creative solution to a complex problem. Daddy is heavier than he looks, David observed, puffing with effort. That's because he's tall and muscular, Emma said approvingly. Good genes for us. Somehow they managed to get Alexander to the car and into the trunk, which was the only space large enough for a full-grown man. Should we tie him up? Daniel asked as they arranged Alexander's limbs in the cramped space. Definitely, Emma said, pulling rope from her backpack. We don't want him to escape when he wakes up. Where did you get rope? Mark asked weakly. Boy Scouts, David replied. We're always prepared. You're not in Boy Scouts. We should be, Emma said, efficiently tying Alexander's hands and feet. We have all the necessary skills. 10 minutes later, they were driving through the streets with an unconscious billionaire tied up in their trunk. Turn up the music, Uncle Mark, Emma instructed from the back seat. We don't want people to hear if he starts making noise. What kind of noise? Mark asked nervously. You know, shouting, banging, demanding to be released, Daniel said casually. The usual kidnapped person noises. We are not kidnappers, David added quickly. We're children arranging a surprise family reunion. That sounds much better, Emma agreed. Just as they pulled into Vanessa's driveway, they heard muffled sounds coming from the trunk. He's awake, Daniel announced. Right on schedule, Emma said, checking her watch. 22 minutes, very precise. The sounds from the trunk were getting louder and more agitated. Let me out, Alexander's muffled voice shouted. Who are you? What do you want? Do you know who I am? My men are going to find me in the next few minutes. If I don't return to the office in the next 5 minutes, my people will start looking for me and they're going to catch you. He sounds angry, David observed. He'll feel better once he meets Mama, Emma said confidently. They opened the trunk to find Alexander looking disheveled and furious, his expensive suit wrinkled and his hair messed up. Who are you people? He demanded, struggling against the ropes. Do you have any idea who I am? Yes, Emma said, stepping forward with her hands on her hips. You're Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Industries, and you're our daddy. And we want to know why you abandoned us and our mama all these years. You should learn to take responsibility for your children. Alexander blinked in confusion. I'm your what? Abandon you? I don't understand. Our daddy, Daniel repeated firmly. Our father. Our paternal parent. The man who helped make us, David added with scientific precision. And then disappeared from our lives, Emma added accusingly. Alexander stared at the three children, his anger momentarily forgotten. Now that he was really looking at them, he could see something familiar in their faces. Something that made his heart skip a beat. That's impossible, he said slowly. I don't have any children. I never abandoned anyone. Well, you do now, Emma said matter-of-factly. Newsflash. We're your children that you didn't know about, Daniel explained helpfully. Mama never told you about us, David added. But we found you anyway. Your mother? Alexander's voice was barely a whisper. Who is your mother? Alexander's. Dr. Vanessa Williams, Emma said, watching his face carefully. Alexander's face went completely white. The name hit him like a physical blow, bringing back 8 years of memories he had tried to bury. Vanessa, he breathed. You do know her, Daniel exclaimed excitedly. So you are our daddy? Emma asked hopefully, her accusatory tone softening slightly. Alexander looked at the three children, really looked at them this time. Emma had his green eyes, Daniel had his smile, David had his thoughtful expression. How old are you? He asked quietly. 7, they said in unison. Alexander's mind raced back 8 years to that graduation night. The timing was perfect. She never told me, he whispered. I didn't abandon you. I didn't even know you existed. So you are our daddy? Daniel pressed. I think. Yes, I think I am, Alexander said, his voice filled with wonder and pain. We found you, Emma shouted. We found our daddy. Just then, they heard Vanessa's car door slam, followed by her voice calling out, Emma! Daniel! David! Where are you? Mark! Mama's home, Emma said excitedly. Time to meet Mama. Vanessa had just returned from work and didn't see the children in the house. She thought Mark had probably taken them out for ice cream. But she was shocked to hear the loud bang on the front door. When she came out, she saw Alexander bound to Uncle Mark's wheelchair, dragged to the front of her house. The triplets were standing there, and Uncle Mark was beside them wearing his army uniform. She froze in shock when she opened the door and saw Alexander. Alexander? She whispered in complete shock. Hello, Vanessa, Alexander said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Long time no see. Surprise, Emma announced cheerfully, spreading her arms wide like a game show host. We found Daddy. We kidnapped him for you, Daniel added proudly, as if he was presenting her with a birthday gift. Well, not kidnapped exactly, David corrected with scientific precision. More like forcibly relocated for a family meeting. Vanessa's legs gave out, and she sank down onto the front steps, staring at the impossible scene in front of her. What? How? When? She stammered. Hi, Mama, Emma said brightly, completely unbothered by her mother's shock. Say hello to our daddy. Isn't he handsome? We definitely got the good genes. We researched him on the internet, Daniel explained matter-of-factly. He's a billionaire. Did you know you used to date a billionaire? And he looks exactly like us, David added, pointing to his own face and then to Alexander's. The resemblance is undeniable. We conducted a thorough visual analysis. Vanessa looked back and forth between Alexander and her children, her mind struggling to process what was happening. How did you find him? She asked weakly. We got the information from a very secure source, Emma said carefully, not wanting to get Auntie Betty in trouble. Someone who cares about our family, Vanessa immediately knew. Betty, she said, closing her eyes. Of course it was Betty. Then we Googled him. Daniel continued the explanation. Did you know he's famous? There are pictures of him everywhere. He's like a celebrity, but for business. Then we went to his favorite restaurant and drugged him, David concluded matter-of-factly, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. You what? Vanessa shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that could probably shatter glass. Just a little sleeping powder, Emma said quickly, holding up her fingers to show a tiny amount. We calculated the dosage very carefully. We're not amateurs, Mama. We researched it thoroughly, Daniel added. We even asked you about it, remember? For our science project? You used that information to drug someone? Vanessa asked in horror. We used it to reunite our family, David corrected. It's completely different. Alexander, still tied up and watching this exchange, couldn't help but be impressed by his children's complete lack of fear about having kidnapped a grown man. Vanessa, he said quietly, interrupting the chaos. We need to talk. Talk? Vanessa's voice cracked. You want to talk? You're tied up in my driveway because my children drugged and kidnapped you, and you want to talk? Well, Alexander said reasonably, we clearly have some things to discuss. Starting with the fact that I apparently have 3 children I never knew about. Could someone please untie me first? He added politely. I promise I won't run away. Though I have to admit, I'm not sure where I would run to at this point. See? Emma said to her brothers. I told you he wouldn't run. Daddies don't run away from their children. Can we trust him? Daniel asked seriously, as if they were negotiating a hostage situation. He's our daddy, David said logically. Of course we can trust him. Uncle Mark finally found his voice. Vanessa, I am so sorry. They convinced me to help them, and before I knew it, we were committing multiple felonies. It's not a felony, Emma protested indignantly. It's a family reunion. With drugging and kidnapping, Mark added weakly. Those are just minor details, Daniel said dismissively. The important thing is that we successfully located our father and brought him home. Vanessa stood up slowly, her legs still shaky, and walked over to Alexander. For a moment, they just looked at each other, 8 years of hurt and longing passing between them. I can't believe you're here, she whispered. I can't believe I have 3 children I never knew about. Alexander replied quietly. 3 brilliant, insane, incredible children. Can we untie Daddy now? Emma asked impatiently. This is supposed to be a happy reunion, but it's hard to have a proper family hug when someone is tied up like a criminal. Vanessa looked at her 3 determined children and realized she had no choice but to deal with this completely insane situation. Fine, she said, kneeling down to untie Alexander's hands. But you 3 are in so much trouble. More trouble than you've ever been in your entire lives. We know, Emma said cheerfully, but it was totally worth it. Completely worth it, Daniel agreed. The best trouble we've ever been in, David concluded. As soon as his hands were free, Alexander stretched and rubbed his wrists. That's much better, he said. The children immediately swarmed him, all talking at once. "Daddy, are you okay?" Emma asked, checking him for injuries. "Did the sleeping powder give you a headache?" Daniel wanted to know. "Are you mad at us for kidnapping you?" David asked. Alexander looked down at his 3 children and felt his heart swell with an emotion he had never experienced before. "No," he said softly. "I'm not mad. I'm amazed. You 3 are the most resourceful, determined, brilliant children I've ever met." "We get it from both sides," Emma said proudly. "Definitely," Alexander agreed, looking at Vanessa. "We should probably go inside," Vanessa said quietly. "The neighbors are starting to stare." Indeed, several neighbors had come out of their houses to see what the commotion was about. Inside the house, they all settled in the living room. Alexander sat on the couch with the 3 children clustered around him, while Vanessa sat in the armchair across from them, still looking shell-shocked. The silence was thick. Everyone was waiting for someone else to speak first. Alexander kept staring at the children, amazed at how much they looked like him and Vanessa. These brilliant, determined little people were his children. "So," Alexander said finally, "what happens now?" "Now," Emma said, standing up like a tiny CEO, "we need to discuss our family situation." "Our family situation?" Alexander repeated. "Yes," Daniel said seriously. "You're our daddy, she's our mama, we're your children. That makes us a family. A family that should live together," David added pointedly. "In your big house with a swimming pool?" Emma concluded hopefully. Alexander looked at Vanessa, who was blushing furiously. "Guys," Vanessa said gently, "it's not that simple. Your father and I, we're not married. We're not even dating. So start dating," Emma said, as if it were obvious. "Then get married. Problem solved." "It's not that simple," Vanessa protested. "Why not?" Daniel asked. "Do you not love Daddy?" Vanessa felt cornered. "It's complicated. Complicated." All 3 children groaned loudly. "We hate that word," Emma declared. "Use simple words, Mama," David instructed. Vanessa took a deep breath. "Your father and I had a fight 8 years ago. A big fight. I was very hurt and angry." "What kind of fight?" Emma asked. I thought your father was kissing another woman," Vanessa said quietly. "Were you?" Daniel asked Alexander directly. "Another woman kissed me," Alexander replied. "But I wasn't kissing her back. I was trying to push her away when your mother saw us." "So it was a misunderstanding," David said thoughtfully. "And Mama ran away before you could explain," Emma added. "And then Mama found out about us but didn't tell you because she was still hurt," Daniel concluded. The children looked at each other, then back at their parents. "That's the dumbest thing we've ever heard," Emma declared. "Emma!" Vanessa gasped. "Well, it is," Emma insisted. "You both made mistakes, you both said sorry, and you both still love each other." Problem solved. "How do you know we still love each other?" Alexander asked, amused. "Because you're both looking at each other like people do in movies," Daniel said matter-of-factly. "And because you haven't tried to leave yet," David added. Alexander and Vanessa looked at each other, both realizing their children were reading them perfectly. "Listen," Alexander said, "I want to be in your lives. I want to be your father. But your mother and I need time to figure things out." "How much time?" Emma pressed. "We don't know," Vanessa said. "Well, figure it out fast," Emma said firmly. "Because Father's Day at school is on Friday, and we want you there." "Father's Day?" Alexander repeated. "Yes," Daniel said. "We've been waiting our whole lives to have a real daddy come to school with us. We're tired of Uncle Mark pretending to be our father," David added. "Will you come?" Emma asked hopefully. Alexander looked at their eager faces. "I would be honored to come to Father's Day at your school." The children erupted in cheers. The next few days were a whirlwind. Alexander came over every evening to spend time with the children and slowly get to know them. He learned that Emma was the natural leader, Daniel was the peacemaker, and David was the logical thinker. Meanwhile, the children were planning Father's Day with military precision. "Daddy," Emma said on Thursday evening, "we need to discuss your outfit for tomorrow." "We want you to look successful and rich," Daniel added. "So Ruby and her brother know our daddy is better than theirs," David concluded. Friday morning arrived, and Alexander showed up with his most expensive car and convoy of security guards, exactly as the children had requested. "Perfect," Emma said approvingly. "You look like a movie star." The ride to school was filled with nervous excitement. "Remember," Emma instructed, "when people ask who you are, say, 'I'm Emma, Daniel, and David's father,'" very proudly. As they walked into school together, heads turned. The children stood taller, their chests puffed out with pride. "That's our daddy," Emma announced loudly. "He's a CEO," Daniel added. "And a billionaire," David concluded. Ruby and her brother stared in shock as the family walked past. "Good morning, Ruby," Emma said sweetly. "I'd like you to meet my father, Alexander Reed." Alexander bent down to shake Ruby's small hand. "Hello, Ruby. I've heard a lot about you." Ruby was speechless, her mouth hanging open. "Cat got your tongue?" Daniel asked innocently. The Father's Day celebration was everything the children had dreamed of. Alexander participated in every activity and beamed with pride. During the presentations, Emma took the microphone. "We have the best daddy in the whole world," she announced. "The absolute best," Daniel agreed. "And he's ours," David added. After school, they went for ice cream to celebrate. "That was the best day ever," Emma declared. "Can we do it again next year?" David asked. "Every year," Alexander promised. "I'll be there for every important moment." Over the next few weeks, Alexander became a constant presence. He picked them up from school, helped with homework, attended soccer games. But the children weren't satisfied with just co-parenting. They wanted their parents back together, and they had discovered that both Alexander and Vanessa were dating other people. The first obstacle was Dr. Martin, Vanessa's colleague at the hospital. Dr. Martin was the easiest target. One night while Vanessa was sleeping, Emma snuck into her room, took her phone, and typed a message to Dr. Martin. "Hi, Martin. Alexander is back in our lives now, and we're planning to get married soon. Please stay away from me. We don't want a stepfather. Our daddy is back." She sent the message and deleted it from the sent folder. The next day at work, Martin gave Vanessa the cold shoulder. She didn't understand why he was suddenly being so distant. The children kept bombarding Martin with messages from Vanessa's phone, always deleting the evidence afterward. A week later, Martin broke up with Vanessa. She thought it was because he didn't want to date a single mother with 3 children. "Why did Dr. Martin break up with you, Mama?" Emma asked innocently at dinner. "I don't know," Vanessa said sadly. "I thought things were going well." "Maybe he realized you still love Daddy," Daniel suggested. "Maybe it's for the best," David added. The children exchanged satisfied glances. Phase 1 complete. Next target, Alexander's fiancée, Isabella. Alexander had told Isabella about his children, and she was not happy about it. "I can't be a stepmother to 3 brats," she had said. "You keep them with their mother. I don't want them around me." "They're my children," Alexander had protested. "We're a package deal." "Well, then maybe we need to reconsider this engagement," Isabella had threatened. When the children visited Alexander's mansion, they set out to make Isabella's life absolutely miserable. When she cooked, the children would add too much salt to her meals, ruining all her efforts. Once, they put food coloring into the laundry when she was washing clothes, turning all her white designer outfits pink and blue. They hid her phone inside the dryer, and Isabella spent the whole day searching for it, going around the house frantically while her phone sat safely hidden in the machine. One particularly memorable day, they stole all her shoes and dumped them in the backyard. Isabella had to walk around barefoot until she found them scattered in the garden. Isabella complained constantly to Alexander, but he thought she was exaggerating about how troublesome his children were being. "Your children are monsters," she would say. "They're just adjusting to having you around," Alexander would reply, not realizing the extent of their sabotage campaign. The final straw came when the children accidentally released a dozen crickets in Isabella's closet. She found them chirping among her designer clothes and had a complete meltdown. After weeks of frustration, Isabella finally exploded. "I can't take this anymore," she screamed at Alexander. "I know you guys have been the ones doing all these nasty things to me." "Well, I know what I can see. I can read the handwriting on the wall. I know you don't want me here." "Well, good for you," Emma said, stepping forward with her hands on her hips. "We don't want you here. We want our mommy back with our daddy, so you can go look for your own husband. Have a good life." Isabella stormed out that very night. and that was how she left. And that was how Vanessa and Alexander found out that they were both single again. Then the children transformed into full-time matchmakers, strategically inviting Vanessa to join all their outings with Alexander. "Mommy, we want you to come to the park with us," Emma would plead sweetly. "Mommy, we want you to come to the movies with us and Daddy," Daniel would add with perfectly innocent eyes. Initially, Vanessa resisted their invitations, but the children were relentlessly persuasive. Eventually, she found herself accompanying them on movie dates, park visits, and trips to art galleries. Month by month, Alexander and Vanessa began spending more time together, gradually rediscovering their connection. One evening, as they sat together on Alexander's spacious porch watching the sunset, a comfortable silence settled between them. "You know," Alexander said thoughtfully, breaking the quiet, "I've noticed something rather interesting lately." "What's that?" Vanessa asked, curious. "Have you noticed that we're both mysteriously single now?" Alexander said with a knowing smile playing at his lips. "And somehow, all our dates keep getting mysteriously canceled or interrupted in the most peculiar ways?" Vanessa laughed nervously, pieces of a puzzle beginning to form in her mind. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that our children are exceptionally skilled at getting what they want," Alexander replied, his tone both amused and admiring. "And what they want, quite clearly, is for us to be together." "You think they actually sabotaged our relationships?" Vanessa asked, though the evidence was becoming increasingly clear to her. "I think," Alexander said carefully, leaning back in his chair, "that 3 children clever enough to successfully kidnap a billionaire are definitely smart enough to orchestrate the end of a few inconvenient relationships." Vanessa thought about Dr. Martin's sudden behavioral change, the mysterious text messages she couldn't remember sending, his abrupt and unexplained departure from her life. "Oh my goodness, they really did it, didn't they?" "Most likely," Alexander confirmed, though he didn't sound upset about the revelation. "The question now is, what are we going to do about their interference?" "We should be furious with them," Vanessa said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Should we?" Alexander asked, shifting closer to her on the porch swing. "Because honestly, I'm grateful. I didn't want to marry Isabella anyway, and I don't believe you were genuinely serious about Dr. Martin." "How can you be so certain about that?" Vanessa asked, her heart beginning to race as he moved nearer. "Because you're here with me instead of with him," Alexander said softly, his voice carrying 8 years of suppressed longing. They sat in comfortable silence, both finally acknowledging the feelings that had never truly disappeared. "Well, now that we're both single again, what do you think?" Alexander said eventually, his voice gentle but hopeful. "Maybe we should get back together, since our children clearly won't allow us to date anyone else. I've tried going out with a few other women, and they always end up leaving me under the most bizarre circumstances." "The same thing has been happening to me," Vanessa admitted. "I don't know what went wrong, but every time I tried going on a date, something would go wrong and they would just disappear." "Well, I think our 3 little soldiers simply refuse to let us be with other people," Alexander said with genuine affection. "So maybe we should just accept defeat and stay single forever. Or maybe," Vanessa said quietly, then blushed as she realized what she was about to suggest, "maybe we should get back together." After that conversation, Vanessa began warming to Alexander again, allowing herself to become more comfortable around him. Then one evening, during a family dinner at Alexander's mansion that extended into a cozy movie night, the children finally went to bed, leaving the adults alone. Alexander turned toward Vanessa with an expression of tender determination. "Maybe we should pick up from where we left off 8 years ago. What do you think?" "I'm not sure that's a wise idea," Vanessa said hesitantly. "It's a perfect idea," Alexander replied confidently. "After all, we created 3 incredible children from our connection 8 years ago. Maybe we should continue what we started, and perhaps we could even have 3 more. Vanessa playfully swatted his hands away from her. 3 more? Do you have any idea how challenging it is to raise 3 children like these? I couldn't possibly survive 3 more. I absolutely do not want any more children." "Never say never," Alexander said teasingly, leaning over to kiss her cheek. "You can never predict what life will bring. It's not as though people plan these things carefully. Children just happen unexpectedly sometimes. That's the beautiful thing about them. They arrive when you least expect it, Alexander added with a mischievous wink. Stop trying to seduce me, mister, Vanessa protested, though she was smiling. I'm not trying to seduce you, Alexander said with mock innocence. I'm simply stating facts. I want us to become a real family. I want you to move in with me and the children. I promise I'll be a better man, a better father, and a devoted husband. Vanessa, I want you to marry me. Without hesitation, she said yes. Several years later, they celebrated their wedding in grand style. On their wedding night, the children gathered in their new bedroom in their father's mansion, toasting their success with glasses of sparkling juice. Mission accomplished, Emma declared, raising her glass triumphantly. We did it. We successfully reconciled our parents and orchestrated their marriage. Absolutely, Daniel agreed enthusiastically. We are unquestionably the most skilled FBI detectives in the entire world. I couldn't agree more, David added with satisfaction. Meanwhile, in another room across the hall, Vanessa and Alexander sat together on their bedroom balcony, holding each other close under the starlit sky. You know, just a few months ago, I never imagined this moment would come, Vanessa mused contentedly. But here we are, married, with a complete family, and 3 absolutely extraordinary children. Just a few months ago, I never thought I could be this happy, Alexander replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her cheek. But I'm grateful for every dramatic twist and turn that brought us to this point. I'm grateful that our children found me, and I'm grateful that I found my way back to you. And that was how they discovered their happiness, and how they reconciled their hearts with each other. The wild graduation party celebration that Vanessa and Alexander had enjoyed 8 years earlier had indeed produced 3 hurricanes with tiny legs and sharp tongues, capable of making grown adults question their life choices. But they were the most wonderful hurricanes imaginable, and through their unwavering determination, brilliant strategic planning, and just a touch of creative kidnapping, they had successfully reunited their family. Sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive disguised as beautiful chaos. Sometimes being kidnapped by your own children turns out to be exactly the rescue you never knew you needed. And sometimes, 3 small hurricanes are precisely what a family requires to become truly complete. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this story? Let me know of your thoughts in the comment section below. Until I bring another intriguing story your way again, bye for now.